What is up, everyone? I'm Kimmi Chex. That guy right there is Adam Rank, and you're watching NFL Fantasy Bites. Rank, it is finally Week 13. Week 12 would never end. We had Wednesday afternoon football, the Steelers versus the Ravens. That game got pushed because of concerns regarding COVID-19. But now we're in Week 13. We are 1 week away from the NFL Fantasy Playoffs starting. As a reminder, in Week 13, both the Panthers and the Buccaneers are out on a bye, so make sure you get those guys out of your starting lineup. But Adam Rank, happy final Week 13. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful, thank you. It's such an interesting time in fantasy football because even if you have a playoff spot locked up, you might be battling for seeding, for a bye. Like I'm in a league where I have 9 wins, and I feel like that should be a bye. But unfortunately, there's 2 other guys with 9 wins, so we're scrapping through it. And the funniest thing too, it's my second city league. We're battling for the highest point total of the regular season. You get a prize for that. It's a separate. I'm ahead by 2 points, so I've got anxiety of winning to get the bye, winning by enough to get the overall high score. So there's a lot of things going on this week.
All right, tell the people what we got going on in our show today.
Well, we got a lot of cool things coming up. We're going to do our go big or go home players because, like I said, this is going to be a very pivotal week. So we're going to take some wild swings on some players. And we're also going to be bringing in Michael F. Florio. He's going to be dropping some knowledge about the biggest risers of Week 13. And, of course, the biggie, Club Dub!
Air horn. There we go.
It's going to be a great show.
I know we're getting near the end of the fantasy season though, which makes me sad. But this is the most pivotal week so that you can secure a spot in your fantasy playoffs. Maybe our bites of the week can help give some guys some knowledge. So start us off, Adam Rank.
Well, my bite of the week is going to be about one of my favorite players in the league, Younghoe Koo, who has been dominating over the last couple of weeks, had 21 fantasy points in Week 12. And since Week 8, this Falcons kicker is averaging more fantasy points per game than DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Aaron Jones, Kareem Hunt. And now Kua's got a game this week against the New Orleans Saints. It's indoors. He's been perfect on his kicks of more than 50 yards. This guy has been a fantasy superstar.
All right, are you done? Are you serious?
What's wrong with that? That's not a good bite? I thought it was a good
Rank, it's kickers. It's kicker news. We get it. Kickers matter. Absolutely. They matter. But can you please give me like a real bite of the week, one that's like very relevant, like a fantasy relevant guy, not so much a kicker?
Okay, that's a good call. So why don't we talk about DeAndre Hopkins? Because this week he's going up against the Los Angeles Rams. And I just mentioned a moment ago that he's averaged less fantasy points than Younghoe Koo over the last couple of weeks. And now he's going up against the Los Angeles Rams. And they've got Jalen Ramsey. Hopkins has had fewer than 60 receiving yards in 3 of his last 4 games. The Rams have allowed the fewest receiving yards to wide receivers this season. There's a question of whether he'll be shadowed by Jalen Ramsey. He's done it a couple of times this season against some of the bigger names in the league. And of course, Hopkins and Ramsey have a history from the AFC South where Hopkins has had some success against them. And let's not act like it's easy to shut him down. But this is one, again, this is coming in my league of record. I had DeAndre Hopkins and DJ Moore. I had to make a move to get DK Metcalf recently just because I needed some stability because DeAndre Hopkins has not been the rock that I needed him to be. So I'm a little concerned, but I'm still hopeful that he's going to come through for me.
Okay, I feel like he makes up for it though because he's now the NFL's official jump man because of that crazy Hail Murray from Kyler Murray against the Buffalo Bills. So it's like, well, if he's not performing super well in fantasy, that's okay because he's jump man. So whatever. But that's a good one. Thank you for giving me a real bite of the week about a real fantasy player and not a kicker. It's time for mine, and I want to talk about a running back who's trying to fill the shoes of Saquon Barkley. We thought it could be Devonta Freeman, but not so much. Instead, it's been Wayne Gallman, and you should absolutely get him into your starting lineups this week. He's going up against the Seattle Seahawks. Now, Wayne Gallman is the only running back with 13-plus fantasy points in each of the last 5 games. No other running back in the league has had more than 3 straight. So I know that obviously it's a huge void to fill with Saquon Barkley not being in that offense, but Wayne Gallman is the lead back for the New York Giants. I know our producer Eddie on the Fantasy Podcast is hyped since he's a Giants fan, but Wayne Gallman actually may be the real deal at the running back position. So like I said, favorable matchup this week against the Seattle Seahawks. They're susceptible to the run game. They're a lot worse against the passing game. So start up all your wide receivers if you need some help this week. But Wayne Gallman is good.
Yeah, that's one of the things too. I did like because they went out and signed Devonta Freeman, and I was kind of surprised because the organization kind of really liked Wayne Gallman, and sometimes the best option is your in-house option. You don't have to look outside. Like, we were talking about this about WCW in the 90s, where they brought in all those former WWE superstars, which were great. We love Hulk Hogan. Well, not him so much, but Kevin Nash and Scott Hall we certainly like. But the biggest star became Bill Goldberg, who was a guy that they had in-house. And I think that was you who made that point. So I thought that was pretty astute. And I think that that's what's been working out for the Giants here.
I don't know a single name of anybody you just named.
You've never heard of any of those people. Maybe. I'm sorry.
Okay, we need to focus. Laser focus. All right, guys, it is week 13, which means we are 1 week away from the fantasy playoffs. So let's do something a little different. Let's do go big or go home. Let's talk about some of our favorite boom or bust plays of the week in case you need to swing for the fences to try to get into the fantasy playoffs. Rank, who do you like at quarterback this week? Go big or go home? It's a YOLO play.
Mitch, by God, Trubisky. I am going to start him this week. Yeah, buddy, air horns. I love it. Thanks, Christy. You know what? The one thing that I really like about this play is the history Mitch has had against the Detroit Lions. If an alien came to Earth and only saw Mitch Trubisky playing against the Detroit Lions, that would be his Patrick Mahomes. He'd be like, this is the greatest quarterback I've ever seen. I don't know how I've already mastered English being an alien on this earth for the first time, but I love this Mitch Trubisky, who has averaged close to 26 fantasy points per game in his last 4 games against the Lions. He also has 3 touchdown passes in all 4 of those contests. And I will say this, in our NFL Fantasy Live League, I took MJD's advice. I got caught up in the euphoria of Tom Brady's going to score 50 touchdowns this year. And the one thing about the NFL Fantasy Live League, and I don't want to pull back the curtain to anybody who's really trying, I've won that league 4 times. So this is my experimental. This is like, it's like my Tom DeLonge Angels and Airwaves. Like, this isn't my main thing, but it's a side project that I certainly care about and I want to do well. I don't want to lose. Nobody wants to lose, but I'm more willing to take risks here and do stuff like this. And with Tom Brady on a bye, I'm putting in the claim, or I put in the claim, I should say, for Mitch Trubisky, and I'm ready to go.
Big Mitch. This is risky. This is a risk it for the biscuit type of situation, but it's week 13. This is why we call it go big or go home. I really hope that your guy delivers for you. The Chicago Bears need help. Remember when you could have gotten Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson, though?
I don't remember that at all. I don't recall it that way.
Selective amnesia. Okay. I like that.
We drafted Trubisky in the 4th round. We took Eddie Jackson 2nd overall. That's what I tell myself in my mind to make me feel better.
If that's what makes you go to bed at night and sleep well, good on you, Adam Rank. Let's move to one of my go big or go home plays this week. What about Nyheim Hines at the Houston Texans? Now, it's looking like Jonathan Taylor is trending upwards and could be playing, but even if he's on the field, I'm still rocking with Nyheim Hines against the Texans. He's been on a roll since week 10, averaging 18 points in that stretch. His 4 catches per game shows that he's involved in the passing game and not just the running game, which bodes well for the fact that he is facing Houston, who are allowing the most yards per game to running backs, as well as the 3rd most fantasy points to the position this season. It's been very confusing of figuring out who the lead back for this Colts offense is. I'm rocking with Hines for the rest of the season, and I'm going to fire him up with confidence against the Texans this week. Adam Rank, give me another one, though.
I'm going to go with Amari Cooper against the Baltimore Ravens. And even though the Ravens have allowed the 7th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers this season, somebody like Amari Cooper is just somebody who's been consistently good for fantasy. He's been consistent with his yardage. Obviously, he took a little bit of a step down when Dak Prescott was replaced because of his injury and Andy Dalton came in and Danucci and all those guys. But he's still been very productive. And I think what we saw on Wednesday afternoon was that receivers can still score against this team. Juju, if you started him, that was a pretty good game. Of course, it didn't quite work out for Deontay Johnson and Claypool, but I do like the fact that Amari Cooper will likely be the most targeted receiver in this offense. And at some point, you know what? Your really good players just have tough matchups, and you got to go with it. And, hopefully you play 3 receivers and Amari Cooper can get us to double digits. But I'm willing to take that risk with him because I think that he's got the potential. And I'd rather do that. I know you were talking about the Giants receivers. And if you have, it's fun to be like, well, Golden Tate has a great matchup, but you never know. And so I would just go with the better player, the guy who's probably going to be counted on a little bit more. So I feel even in leagues that I care about, I would still go with Amari Cooper.
And, even with this situation happening in Dallas with the changes at quarterback, with the struggling O-line because of injuries, et cetera, Amari Cooper has still been pretty good. And so has Ezekiel Elliott, right? When they do get the opportunities to have the football, they are productive. So I completely agree on that one. Now, speaking of players with tough matchups, this is why it's called go big or go home. So no one at me and be like, it's so tough of a matchup.
No, Adder.
It's a tight end. Tight ends have been horrible this season. I think this may be the worst tight end season because of injuries, because of guys not performing well, etc. I think the only solid tight end, in my opinion, is my guy Travis Kelce. But that's why I'm going to rock with Logan Thomas against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday Night Football. Very tough matchup. I understand that because the Steelers are allowing the second fewest fantasy points to tight ends this season, but I really don't have any better options. Logan Thomas caught all 4 of his targets for 20 yards, and he hauled in Alex Smith's only passing touchdown on that Thanksgiving game where they beat the Dallas Cowboys 41-16. He finished as the tight end number 10 last week. Again, I understand the matchup is hard, but at this tight end position, I really don't have anyone better to start. So I'm going to rock with Logan Thomas on this one. Rank, am I crazy for this?
No, you're not crazy. I did have him as a sit in my stardom situm column, but I do feel like when I'm putting that together, there's always players like Logan Thomas that even though I'm saying I'm advocating that, yeah, there's probably some options I would like better, but there is some upside there. And that's the toughest part about the tight end position is Travis Kelce is the only consistent guy. And I was trying to say our guy, Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce is 65 points better than Darren Waller, who is the tight end 2 right now. And Darren Waller is 65 points better than Tyler Higbee, who's been garbage. So just kind of tell you how deep that gap has been. And Tyler Higbee is a good football player, by the way. I just saying fantasy-wise, the production hasn't been there. And it's tough because every week one of these guys can go off. And we've tried to play the numbers. We've tried to play the matchups. Nothing seems to work. But I do like the fact that, I'm a little worried about Terry McLaurin this week against the Steelers. And so if Alex Smith is playing it close to the line of scrimmage, there could be some opportunity for Logan Thomas. And like I said, it's go big or go home. And if you've got a feeling, I'm not going to sit here and talk you out of it because there's nobody. The only thing for the tight end position I would say is start Travis Kelce. Everything else is a roll of the dice.
Roll of the dice. Welcome to fantasy football in 2020. This entire year is a roll of the dice, but we're almost to 2021, so stick in there, everyone. It is time for a break, but coming up, Fantasy F Florio. He's dropping his biggest risers for week 13. These are guys who are must starts, and we have another question. Should Kyler Murray managers be a little bit nervous after last week? All of that and more coming up next on NFL Fantasy Bites. Welcome back to NFL Fantasy Bites. It's no longer just Adam Rank and I. We welcome in our favorite analyst and researcher extraordinaire. It's Michael F. Fantasy Florio, how are you? Happy week 13. I like this new floral situation we got today.
Thank you. Happy week 13, and I was so excited to break this one out for you guys today. The credit goes to my fiance Nicolette. She bought this for me, and it was an early Christmas present, but she gave it to me because she said she wanted to make sure I got to wear it on Fantasy Bites. So I'm wearing it on Fantasy Bites, and I was very excited to show it to you and Rank today.
Yeah, shout out to Nicolette for committing to the bit. Like that's the one thing that you want, and that's a nice young lady right there who's gonna buy in and have this. Like it's a really cool gift, first of all, and the fact that she got you a gift based on this show. The show's going to be probably close to being off the air by the time Christmas came around. So this is making me a little weepy. I'm already in the holiday spirit, but that is a nice little touch. So thanks, Nicolette, for being, I feel like she's a part of the show for this. Like, I love it.
Nicolette's the real MVP. She also just celebrated a birthday, so happy belated birthday to you, Nicolette. Florio, the reason why we have you here today is because you're going to give us your biggest risers of Week 13. Let's kick it off with a quarterback.
The real reason was the hoodie, I think, but the quarterback is Kirk Cousins. Sorry, Rank, I know he is a division rival,
Whatever.
but he has been playing better football as of late. You see it right there. Since Week 9, he is the QB8, giving you nearly 22 fantasy points per game. He has scored over 20 in 3 of his last 4, including multiple passing touchdowns in 4 straight. So that is a safe floor, but it's a home game, which is big because he's averaging nearly 22.5 fantasy points at home and just 11 on the road. And shout out to our researcher, Matt Okada. He pointed this out to me. Kirk Cousins' worst home game is better than his best road game this year. So the fact that he's home against a team allowing the 3rd most fantasy points to quarterbacks, I'm excited to get Kirk Cousins in my lineup this week.
You know, contrary to what you might think, Michael, Kirk Cousins hates me, but I don't mind him. I mean, he's a division rival and he's good. And I think that he's kind of gotten himself into a position similar to what we saw with Russell Wilson earlier in the season, is that their defense has played so poorly that he's been forced into situations where he has to sling the football. Obviously, Mike Zimmer and this offense led by Gary Kubiak would rather just run Dalvin Cook 30 times a game. But because of game script, Kirk Cousins is able to go out there and throw the football. And so this week against the Jags, I don't know. I think the Jags have been playing pretty well. So I could certainly see this one getting into another contest where it's a shootout. He could easily have 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. He could have 166 in a pair. But I think that he's going to end up doing pretty well. I have him right around 270, 2 touchdowns. I think that's a really nice pick.
Okay, as a reminder for that game going up against the Jags, Gardner Minshew is no longer the starting quarterback. Mike Glennon will be playing. So if you're desperate and need a streaming quarterback, that is the guy who maybe you want to pick up, because as Adam Rank just pointed out, that Vikings defense has not been playing hot all season long. All right, Florio, give us another guy, though.
It is Kenyon Drake, and I know at one point this year we all hated the Drake. It looked like some people were considering dropping him at some point, but since he has come back from the injury, he's been playing a lot better. Right there, you could see his fantasy points have increased in 3 straight games. Last week, he had 25 touches. That was a season high. Chase Edmonds only had 10, but what really excites me is before the injury, he had 11 targets all year. And in the 3 games since the injury, he already has 9, the 2 games, he has 9 targets. And in the last 2 games, he has more receiving yards than he had in the first 10 weeks combined. He is starting to get the usage that myself and many others expected when they drafted him in the late 1st round, early 2nd round this year. And it took 10 weeks, but it's finally starting to pay off. So Kenyon Drake, he is a top 20 running back for me this week, and he is someone who has really moved up from a flex option to more of an RB2 that you can really trust.
Yeah, I love this one as well. And to me, to use an analogy that we would like, is he's kind of a Dolph Ziggler type of player. Like, we love Dolph and we feel like he should be in the main event scene, and for whatever reason, probably not his fault, it just hasn't happened. And I think Kenyon Drake kind of fell into that mix as well. Somebody that, even going back to his time in Miami, we thought that he was going to be a solid RB1 for us. And we got excited at the end of last season, had high expectations coming into this year. But now we're finally starting to see it. And if it's going to be one of these things where Kenyon Drake is terrible, or not terrible, but like not as good as we thought he was through the first 10 weeks, but carries us to a fantasy championship, I will happily take that.
But do you guys think that his performance the last few weeks has been so good because Kyler Murray's been banged up and he's been dealing with a shoulder injury and he's not been as productive? Do we think it's all Kenyon Drake, or does this Kyler Murray situation have anything to do with his increased production as well?
I think it's a little of both.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I think Kenyon Drake... sorry.
No, Mike, please.
I think Kenyon Drake's been playing better, but I also think the fact that Kyler Murray's shoulder's been banged up, he's been running less, which just leads to more opportunity for Drake, and he's taken advantage of it.
Okay, interesting. I just want to know because we've got a lot of questions of people wondering if they should start or sit Kyler Murray this week. So just an interesting little tidbit with Kenny and Drake. Florio, give me your last guy. Biggest riser of Week 13. Who is it?
This guy is the biggest riser because there's some weeks previously where he wasn't even ranked, and now he's an RB2. It is Latavius Murray of the New Orleans Saints, and the reason is Taysom Hill. Like, Taysom Hill has made 2 starts, and you could see right there, since Week 11, in those 2 Taysom Hill starts, Latavius Murray is the RB10, and he is averaging, with Hill, more carries per game than Alvin Kamara, more rushing yards per game. The same amount of targets, more catches, more receiving yards. He is playing the same amount of snaps in those 2 games as Kamara has. He is more than doubling the yards per game that Kamara has put up. It's just, with Taysom Hill, they're looking to become more of a power running team, in my opinion, and that suits Latavius Murray and his style of play more than it does Alvin Kamara. Kamara is so dangerous with Drew Brees because what he can do as a pass catcher out of the backfield. But if Taysom Hill is showing that he's not really a guy who's going to throw to his running backs, and instead they're going to rely on just controlling the clock and power running, I think Latavius Murray is the play here. I have them both as RB2s this week. Can't believe I'm saying it. It is closer than I've ever had these 2 ranked ever.
I know, and it's one of those situations as well that any league where I have Alvin Kamara as my RB1, I've kind of, not that you write it off, like I'm not trying to win a fantasy championship, but I'm like, this is a huge blow. Like, I don't know if my team is going to be able to recover from it, because part of it is if you don't need to run Alvin Kamara the way that they've run him over the previous 4 years or whatever, then why would you? The Saints have found a formula that is working for them, as everything that you described. And unfortunately for us as fantasy enthusiasts, Sean Payton, for whatever reason, would rather win a Super Bowl more than us winning a fantasy championship, which, number one, that's rude. But number 2, it's just the reality of the situation. And so we can sit here, and I'm a brand name snob, and I will continue to start Alvin Kamara, but I have to understand it's not going to be as good as it was earlier in the year.
Craziness. Alvin Kamara may be getting faded this week. Never would have thought we would have ever said that, especially this season after he was the running back number 1 in terms of fantasy. But if you always have questions for us, remember, you can tweet us and hopefully we can answer your questions. Tweet us at NFL Fantasy. If you have starts, sits questions, any question to help get you into this playoff push, we are here for you. So Florio, while we have you on the show, I want to get some questions for the 3 of us. Let's start with this one. See, I knew it was going to come because I mentioned Kyler Murray earlier. Rank, I'm going to start with you. Kyler Murray or Justin Herbert this week? What do you think?
Well, I think I know which way you 2 are going to be leaning. So allow me an opportunity to say a couple of nice words about Kyler Murray, that even though the floor has been kind of lowered because he's not running the ball as much, obviously his 10 touchdowns are a big reason why he was a fantasy superstar earlier this season. In week 17 of last year, he threw for 325 yards against this Rams defense. I believe that he does have the ability. So if he's healthy and ready to go, he's not going to score 37 fantasy points, but I have him right in around 21 fantasy points this week, and I think that you can start him.
Yeah,
Florio,
Rank,
what are your thoughts?
I know you are the king, like the captain of the Justin Herbert fan club. So that is telling that you still like Murray there. I do like Murray. I have both of these guys ranked as top 5 quarterbacks, but I'm going to go with Justin Herbert only because of what Kimmi brought up earlier. The fact that Kyler Murray's shoulder has been banged up, and because of that, he has ran less in the last 2 games. And the Rams defense is scary to me. So unless you have 2 stud quarterbacks, I think you still play Kyler Murray this week. But in this instance, I would actually go with Justin Herbert here.
I agree. I'm on the Justin Herbert train, even though he has a bad haircut and has not played as well since he got his bad haircut. The only thing to note is that it is a tough matchup going up against the New England Patriots because Bill Belichick has a 19-5 record against rookie quarterbacks, but Justin Herbert is elite, right? He's thrown 300-plus passing yards in 6 of 10 games this season. The only other rookie quarterback to ever do that is Patrick Mahomes, so whatever. It's Justin Herbert for me this week. Let's get another question in here while we have you, Florio. This one, Owen wants to know, should I start Deebo Samuel or Chris Carson? Florio, kicking it off with you on this one.
I'm going to go with Chris Carson. I know last week was a little bit worrisome seeing Carlos Hyde get way more work than I think many anticipated with Carson coming back. I'm hopeful that it was Carson's first week back and they were easing him into it. But this is a game here where I think the Seahawks, it could be Colt McCoy for the Giants at quarterback. I don't think they're going to really have much trouble. I think they're going to be playing with the lead throughout. And that typically tends to a lot more running plays. And when it comes to a closely ranked receiver versus running back, I tend to lean the running back if they are a back who gets the goal line opportunities like Chris Carson, because one touchdown could really be the difference between a really nice day and a so-so day. So I like the running back's chances always of scoring a little bit better.
Yeah, I had a weird situation on Monday night where I had DK and Dallas Goedert going up against Chris Carson. And when Carson scored that touchdown, I thought I was cooked and I was super upset and morose about it. So I understand the power of that one touchdown. The thing is, though, is I saw way too much Carlos Hyde, which scares me, which means I'm going to go with Deebo Samuel in this instance. Number one, he is their top pass catcher on that team. And I know that if you look at the air yards, and I know that it's kind of the hipster thing to do right now, like, oh, it's air yards. It's like, you just want to put the ball in this guy's hands. Like, he's an extension of the Kyle Shanahan running game, which is why you want to get as many shares of him as possible and play him in as many opportunities that you can. This should be the guy that we should be screaming about, like, why can't I flex him as a running back? Because he basically is. And so he's a monster. And this is an aside for real football. So I don't know if you like real football out there, but I will say when him and George Kittle come back, that combination is going to be so good. I'm worried for the rest of the NFC. I mean, not my team because we're probably not going to make it, but the rest of you should be concerned.
All right. Thank you guys for joining. Florio, thank you so much for coming in. It's always a pleasure to see you and your floral. Shout out again to your fiance, Nicolette, for the early Christmas present. As a reminder, if you want to go and see Florio's weekly sleepers and his rankings, you got to go to NFL.com/Florio. That's where you can find his week 13 sleepers. And then you can go to NFL.com/rankings to see his week 13 rankings. Florio, thank you so much, my friend. It's time for a very quick break. Still to come, we got our Club Dub Players of the Week. We're about to go off and send you dancing into the playoffs. Plus, some fantasy villains you need to get out of your lineups. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. It is officially time for my very favorite part of the show. It's time for Club Dub. These are the guys that we guarantee are going to score over 25 fantasy points. Adam Rank is in his club attire, so I'm going to just let you kick it off.
You know, the one time I tried to go to like this hipster bar in Hollywood, they wouldn't allow me to wear a hat, so I don't know if that is still a thing or whatever, but my Club Dub Player of the Week, Club Dub, I'm going to go with Tyler Lockett. Even though I had an opportunity to hang out with DK Metcalf this week, who I love and will start him through eternity, he's going to be drawing James Bradbury this week, which means a lot of opportunity for Tyler Lockett to go out there and really put up a lot of fantasy points for you. I know it's been tough. If you're a manager who has started Tyler Lockett week in and week out, it has been a grind because obviously on Monday night it was not good, but he's had at least 9 targets in 2 out of his last 3 games. The biggest thing, though, he runs 52% of his routes from the slot. The Giants have allowed 5 receiving touchdowns to slot receivers this season. That's tied for the 8th most in the NFL. They've allowed the 10th most fantasy points per game to slot receivers. And Tyler Lockett is probably one of the best slot receivers they are going to be seeing. So with Bradbury likely locked up on DK once again, I'm going to go with Tyler Lockett. I think this is a great play.
Love it. Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett. Get him fired up into your starting lineup. All right, it's time for mine. I got another wide receiver. It's my guy. Nelson Aguilar going up against the New York Jets on Sunday. He's no longer memeable. He has redeemed himself this season now that he is a Las Vegas Raider, and he has Derek Carr as his starting quarterback. Fire him up against the Jets, guys. The Jets have the 2nd most fantasy points to wide receivers since week 8. Nelson Aguilar is still available in almost 70% of NFL.com leagues. He was only started in 18% of NFL.com leagues in week 12. He's had 10 plus fantasy points in 6 of the last 8 games. He's had 14 plus points in 5 of the last 8. Nelson Agholor is a good football player. You see that Derek Carr in this offense trust him in these must-win opportunities in situations in the end zone. We understand the upside that a player has when he can go and he can score that +6. Nelson Agholor is one of those guys, so this is the week to start him against the Jets. All right, those were our club dub, the guys who are going to deliver and be great. But it's time for club dud. These are the guys that could tarnish your lineups and your dreams of getting into the fantasy playoffs. See, sad horn. That's how you know. So Rank, give me your club dud player of the week.
You know what? I'm going to go with Ezekiel Elliott. And even though earlier in the show I was talking about starting Amari Cooper, Ezekiel Elliott is going to be somebody that I'm going to be avoiding. This Cowboys offensive line has lost Tyron Smith, Zach Martin, Cam Irving, and it's not been a good situation. Obviously, it was exasperated by the fact that Dak Prescott is no longer the quarterback. And Zeke is finished with 55 rushing yards or less in 6 of his last 9 games. He's had less than 20 receiving yards in 6 out of his last 7. If you're looking for some upside, he is the goal line back, which is nice. But the thing is, how many times are they going to get near the goal line against this tough Ravens defense? And I understand I'm a brand name guy. If you drafted Ezekiel Elliott in the first round, the sunk costs are there, and you're going to want to continue to start him, even though, he hasn't been dialing it up. But if you had picked up other options, if you have Antonio Gibson and some other good running back, maybe even Kenyon Drake, I would probably go in that direction. It's tough to sit Zeke, I understand. But the matchups and the situation with that offense is not great right now.
The sad horn kills me every single time. It's amazing.
Good.
It's like we go from the air horn to sad horn. This sucks. A guy who I'm not scared to sit this week is Cooper Kupp going up against the Cardinals on Sunday. Now, back in week 11, both him and Robert Woods had incredible performances. But last week, he only put up 6 fantasy points. That was tied for 59th amongst all wide receivers. Stop with the sad horn because I cannot focus because it cracks me up. All right, Cooper Kupp, back to what I'm talking about. He's had 10 points or fewer in 2 of the last 3 games. He's also had 0 touchdowns in 7 straight games. I think Robert Woods is way more of a reliable receiver, and if you wanted to start any receiver in this Rams offense, it would be Robert Woods. But if I have a must-win situation to get me into the fantasy playoffs, or I have a situation where I need to have good seeding and have a week on a bye in the fantasy playoffs, Cooper Kupp is not the guy that I'm trusting for that. So no shade. He's incredible. I know he plays the guitar. I met him and his wife at Super Bowl last year. Incredible guy. You're just a dud for me in fantasy football this week. I'm so sorry, Cooper Kupp. Now, it's a Thursday, and normally we have Thursday night football, but we don't today. So you can't watch games inside of the NFL Fantasy app today, but on Sunday, you absolutely can. So as a reminder, I know it's week 13, so hopefully you've already downloaded it. But if you have not, it is free. Download it on your phone. There's a little TV button at the top. You click it. Boom. You have live NFL football. Adam Rank, this isn't our only show. We have a show on Sundays. Tell the people what it is and why they should tune in.
Oh, by the way, you should be watching the NFL Fantasy Game Day Sunday morning, starting at noon Eastern in the all-new NFL Fantasy app. It's a good show. We get you ready for the coming week. We hit some of the club. We go back to Club Dub. By the way, these Club Dub glasses, thank you to George Kittle and his wife for sending these along. Even though I picked you to go 3-13 last year, we're still friends, which is amazing. I appreciate it. But be sure to watch NFL Fantasy Game Day Sunday on the NFL Fantasy app, Facebook, and YouTube, youtube.com/NFL. And we'll hit you up with the latest injury news. And, now more than ever, this is more important to have all those starts and sits, injury news, all that good stuff. So check us out. It's a great show, and we hope to see you Sunday morning.
I love it. Well, this was a great show. It's always a pleasure to see you, my friend Adam Rank. This was NFL Fantasy Bites. Happy week 13, everyone. See you next week.